Well, good morning. Good morning. Just in the sense of, I guess in life you get to a point, right, that where you don't take life for granted. And so, just in a little moment, as I'm setting up, I just want to say thank you to God for keeping children safe last night as Windsor had their prom and they were out and about. And I would say that Windsor may not have been the only school to have prom across the country, but I'm very thankful when I don't hear terrible news. Prom and homecoming are sort of trauma in the sense of just my childhood. When I was in sixth grade, my sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, and 10th grade years, so for 5 years in a row, we witnessed someone die from our school every year in prom or in homecoming due to some driving while intoxicated issue. And so I'm so thankful that God kept people safe. And so we're going to say thanks for that here in a little bit when we pray. We're in Joshua. We're going through, and as you again notice or may not notice, these covers change weekly to give you sort of an image of where we're at and where Israel is at and what we're going to be going through and talking about. And so to recap sort of where we're at, right, in Scripture, the people of Israel, they have been led out of Egypt with Moses, right? And in that leading out of Egypt, at some point, disobedience happened that led to the destruction of an entire generation. So they wandered, Israel, the people of God, a whole nation, they wandered in the wilderness of the desert for 40 years so that an entire generation would die off. Let me be very clear. God has no problem killing off parts of his body that aren't worth it. Well, we're all part of the family of God. You're right. But if you're not doing anything, you potentially are worthless. Right? And if you're not producing fruit, branches, right, you are cut down and you are swept off the floor and you are thrown into the fire. God let an entire generation die because they refused to be obedient. This is a serious deal. So, that generation is dead. That leader, the leader of leaders, doesn't even get to because he gets disqualified. But now Joshua is leading. He steps in after Moses. He is someone that Moses poured into, that God poured into. And the people of Israel now are at the Jordan River, and they are now being told by God, the generation of disobedience is dead. You now are going to be obedient, and you're going to walk in to the land that I promised you, the land of Canaan, and you are going to take it over. Because I promised it to you, your fathers, that for you and for generations it will be yours. So this is where we're at in Joshua. Joshua becomes the leader, and we've been looking at Joshua because in that moment, I think, whilst we might all agree that we view it differently, and by it, I mean the people of Israel and the situation that they're in, the way I view it, or the way that God sort of had me view it as I was reading through Joshua, is that there's a moment where the people of God have to rely on faith outside of their self. They have to rely on someone else to do something for them. They came to a body of water again. They can't cross it without God's help. They came to the city of Jericho. They cannot take over the city, nor even the cities after them in the whole land of Canaan without God's help. The Israelite people are in a moment where they need to have faith in something outside of themselves. We can all understand that. Yes? Sometimes in life you need faith in something else outside of yourself. You have car trouble and you are car illiterate like me. I need help outside of myself. Your 5-year-old daughter gets leukemia. I need help outside of myself, right? I don't know how to change a tire. I need help outside of myself. There's all sorts of things and situations and truths that we understand about that specific idea. And so that's where the people of Israel are at. And that's what we're looking at. Because in those moments of where we have to have faith in something outside of ourselves, sometimes it's terrifying. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes we're fearful due to what we don't know. And so what we've been looking at in Joshua is we've been looking at that in these moments where you have to put faith in something outside of yourself, you're to remember this. God is always with you. God is always with you. And not only is he always with you, he's always working outside of you. One of the hardest things for me to understand was to take a day off. Take a day off, take a day off, take a day off. Why? There are 9 gajillion things to do, and if I'm responsible for it, the faster I get these balls rolling down hills, the better we're going to be. No, God can do work without you. And honestly, it's almost like it's biblical. Creation, 6 days, 7th, rest. Why? 6 days, we're going to talk about this in a little bit. 6 days man can do it. The 7th is God's day. Let him do it. And so the idea, right, is that God's working outside of you. He doesn't need you to work. He wants you to be a part of his work. And so when we're in these moments where we have to rely on faith outside of ourselves, we have to understand that God is asking us or reminding us to always remember that he is always with us and to always remember that he's always working outside of us. We also look at the people of Israel inside of Joshua and we see that you can't just watch God. You have to watch God. And not only do you have to watch God, you have to watch God far enough back so you can see the whole picture. But you're supposed to be whole, you're supposed to be like right where God's at and hold hands with him and like the same person. Yes, I understand this. But all of us understand also that we get too focused sometimes. We get too honed in and we are now unaware of that around us. Horses wear blinders. Why? To keep them focused. To keep them from being distracted. And sometimes as Christians we go, I'm not distracted, I'm so focused. Yes, but you can't see God because you're wearing blinders. You can't just watch God. You have to observe him so you can see all of him, but you can't just watch God and observe him. You have to move and act. You have to follow after him. Why are we watching God fully? To see him fully? Because we've never been where he's going to take us before. Well, nothing new's under the sun, I know, which is why we get to spend time with generations, which is why shameless plug or shameful plug, I don't know. I have no shame. I don't know how you say it, but I have no shame to plug this. That's why you go to things like women's breakfast on the 2nd Saturday of the month or men's breakfast on the 4th Saturday of the month. Why? Because generations of women and generations of men get together. And when you go through things and you're like, I've never been here before, sometimes the picture of God and his fullness shows up in those people that you're eating breakfast with, that you're hanging out with, in the encouragement to go, I know what statistics say, but I'm sitting around a table of 11 men that all are showing and speaking the miraculous power of God in their lives. I know statistics say that some of them shouldn't believe that God works miracles and does miracles, but all of them do. You know how encouraging that is to me as a younger generation? To go, the older generation, not only am I ever fighting with them, but I'm encouraged from them because they go, okay, keep it on because I've seen God work here. I've seen God work here. This is what God's done for me. And if he can do that for me, he can do that for you. Because, right, we don't just remember God is always working or always with us, and always working around us. And we don't just watch God so we can see him move. We have to watch God so that we can remember that God is for us and that we are for God. People of Israel are standing in front of the biggest, the most fortified city in all of the world at the moment. And God said, go take it. Some of you know this story. We're going to be in chapter 6 today. Some of you know this story. But before we get going, let me pray real quick, and then we're going to jump in because I'm so excited. We got something very special for you. Let me pray, and then we'll get in here. God, thank you for today. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for your son. As humbling as it is to walk through and and see my faults laid out in front of everyone in the world to see. God, I know that you use me as a vessel, and as I'm clean, and I'm standing here saying, here am I, send me. I pray that you shut me up and you speak through me. Teach us to be obedient. It's in your son's name I pray. And all God's people said. So listen, just a little transparency, because this is how things work inside the church. You want to be transparent, because here's the reality, right? You give your money in good faith, and we want to be transparent with how we spend it. You're not paying me this week, or at least your tithe and offering didn't go to pay me this week. Your tithe and offering went to something special. As we talked about, we are talking about the crumbling of the wall of Jericho. It's taken some time. It took some phone calls, but we found someone straight from the line of one of the trumpet players. We had to fly him in, had to put him up. It is what it is. But I want you to hear what it would have sounded like as they marched around the wall. Now, we're going to get more into this, but just so that you guys can all be on the same page as me as when we get going, I want to allow him to just play a little bit of what they would have heard. Now, here's what I want to warn you. I'm going to warn you this. It's a trumpet. For those of you that aren't sure, it's a loud instrument. This place echoes. It might be really loud. I don't know. All I know is that I want to hear it. I think you would want to hear it. I think it might be loud enough that if you're nervous about it being too loud, you could plug your ears and still hear it. But what I'd love for you to get to experience is, well, what they experienced as he marched around the wall. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce one of the priests with his trumpet and horn. And so, again, be careful of your ears. So here's the deal. Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe it's not exactly what it sounded like, but from the moment I heard that song as a walkout to a baseball relief pitcher, for those of you who do know, I cannot hear anything other than that jam as they walked around. And so the trumpet, the priests and the horns, it's where we're at today. The song that we probably all grew up, or the majority of us grew up singing, right? Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, 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 right? Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. And then we would all hit the ground and, but whatever. I'm old, I don't want to do that. But we're in chapter 6, and this idea of blowing a trumpet around a wall is the plan that God has for his people. Now, this is a 2-part sermon, and so if you're here today, you have to come next Sunday, because you have to hear the second part of it. We're going to focus on obedience, and we're going to focus on blessing. But as we jump into chapter 6, this is the first verse that we read. This is chapter 6, verse 1. Maybe. Now, Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in, right? Chapter 2, we read about Rahab. We read about spies. We read that the people of Jericho have heard about God, have heard about the people of Israel. They know what's coming, and they're terrified. And not only are they terrified, they have resolved they lose. They haven't even done anything, and they've already resolved. We lost. Verse 2. The Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its kings and mighty men of valor." I want to make this very just clear real quick. This promise of victory is the same promise of victory that we have through Jesus Christ. We win. We win. See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its mighty king, with his king and mighty men of valor. See, at the end, you'll stand with me as my child because of Jesus. It's the same promise of victory. Let's keep going. So here's the plan. Verse 3. God says, you shall march around the city, all the men of war going around the city once. Thus you shall do for 6 days. Verse 4. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horn before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times. The priests shall blow the trumpets. Verse 5. And when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all people shall shout with a great shout. That's the plan. The plan God tells Joshua after he's led him across the Jordan up to the gates of Jericho. He said, here's the deal. You're going to take with you the people, and you're going to take the presence of God, and you're going to take the priests, and you're going to walk around the city once, and they're going to blow horns. And you're going to do that for 6 days, and on the 7th day, you're going to walk around 7 times, and you're going to blow the trumpet on the 7th time. And when the trumpet's blown on the 7th time, all the people are going to shout, and then the walls are going to come down, and everybody's going to go up into the city. Excuse me? What kind of batty plan is that? Right? But that's kind of how it is. All of us are Christians sitting in here. Well, let me say this. Those of us that are Christians sitting in here, we all know we have victory in Jesus. But yet when God gives us the plan, how many times do we go, brother, what? What do you mean? That's not going to win. I mean, I can only imagine hearing this plan, not as Joshua, because I think Joshua bought into it. I think Joshua believed wholeheartedly. I don't think there was a doubt and waver in Joshua's head. Why do we, as Christians who live now, look at people that we read in the Bible and go, they're Bible characters. They're not like us. We're going to get there. But that's the plan. That's the plan God gives them. And we read, if you keep reading through 6, 7, and 8, you see that that's what the people did. They did it. I don't know if they all believed, but Joshua believed and had no doubt, had no hesitation enough to go, hey, everybody focus in. Here is the plan. And then he told them. And we're going to pick up in verse 8. It says, and just as Joshua commanded the people, 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horn before the Lord went forward, blowing the trumpets, with the ark of the covenant of the Lord following them. Verse 9. The armed men were walking before the priests who were blowing the trumpets, and the rear guard were walking after the ark. The ark was surrounded by the armed guard, as well as the priests blowing the trumpets, almost as if God felt like his presence should be and is worth protecting. That's free today. He says, verse 9, the armed men were walking before the priests blowing the trumpets, and the rear guard walking after, while the trumpets blew continually. 10, Joshua commanded the people, you shall not shout or make your voice heard, neither shall any word go out of your mouth until the day I tell you to shout. Then you shall shout. Verse 11 says, so he caused the ark of the Lord to circle the city, going about it once, and then they came to the camp, and they spent the night there. Make sure you're paying attention to that, right? Like, the guard surrounding the presence of God. The presence of God marching before the people. What did they do for 6 days? They shut up and worshiped. That's it. That's it. Why is worship so important? Because it's not about you, it's about God. And when you worship, you're very, very clear, should be, very clear. It's not about me, it's about God. Well, some of these songs I sing from my perspective, you're right. It's your perspective about God, for God. Some of these songs we sing are God's perspective of you to help remind you that you are God's, you're for God. But there was intentionality in putting God's presence before the people. There's an intentionality to putting God's presence before the people. And so that's what they did for the first day, it says. And then if you keep reading, it says they did it for the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day. And in verse 15, we read that on the seventh day, they rose early at dawn of the day, and they marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that day that they marched around 7 times. Verse 16. And the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." Verse 17. And the city and all that was within it shall be, and the city and that all that it is within it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent. But you, keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction. This is verse 18. Lest when you have devoted them, you take any of the devoted things and make the camp of Israel a thing of destruction and bring trouble upon it. Verse 19 says, but all silver and gold and every vessel of bronze and iron are holy to the Lord, and they shall be brought and gone into the treasury. Verse 20 says, well, before we get there, verse 19. I want to go back up to verse 17. But right there, they're on the 7th day. They walk around 7 times, and then they're going to blow the horn. And Joshua says, when you blow the horn, right, and on the 7th time, and you hear me yell, shout, this is what's going to happen. The walls are going to come crumbling down, and you're going to go up into the city, and you're going to take it for yourself. But understand this. The city and everything in it is devoted to the Lord for destruction. That's a big deal. Not only is it a big deal for one thing, it's a big deal for another thing as well. Devoted. When you devote something, the word that's used in Hebrew, as well as the word that they translate in the New Testament, devoted, right? The idea and the picture is this. When you devote something to a thing or a person, to something else or someone else, that thing or person can only be used for what you devoted it to. Because this was the problem in the Israelite nation. And this is why the commandment exists, or one of the reasons why the commandment exists, honor your father and mother, for it will go well with you, and you will have long days of life. What was happening is that children had things that were for their parents to help take care of them when they hit a certain place. But what the children would do is devote those things to the Lord so that their parents couldn't have them. And they would keep these things because they were only used for the purpose of that devotion. But the idea is still the same. Just like we take everything good and we use it for evil, there's a dark side and there's a light side. But the truth of what devoting things to the Lord meant was that was only to be used for the Lord now. But what he said was, you need to devote it to the Lord for destruction. You need to give it to God and devote everything to God, because it's now all for him. It's not used for anything or by anyone else. You need to devote it all to God. But what you do in your devotion to God is you destroy it all. You don't have any of it left. The only thing that we're keeping is the gold and the silver and the bronze and the iron. But again, it's devoted to God. It's not yours. It's not the people's. It's in the treasury of the Lord. It's going all to the temple. It's going all to the priesthood. It's going all for God. It's not going for the people of Israel. It's It's going for God. Devoting things to the Lord means that now is used only for the Lord. When you devote something to the Lord for destruction, it means you destroy it in sacrifice to God. He says that only the prostitute Rahab and all of her family that's with her in her house shall live, because she hid messengers whom we sent. Go to verse 18. But again, right, he says, watch yourself, because things are supposed to be devoted to the Lord for destruction. And if you keep those things, you make the camp of Israel a thing for destruction. You want to know why some of you in your lives are terrible right now and you can't get out? It's because you got something you were supposed to devote to the Lord for destruction and you keep hanging around. You keep it around. You want to know why your life seems to be constant chaos, constant upheaval? Because you've got something devoted to the Lord that was supposed to be devoted to the Lord for destruction, and you've kept it for yourself. And so Joshua gave a warning to the people of Israel. This is what it's for. This is what happens. Be obedient. You know what's crazy is that some of us as Christians, when we get past the nonsense, it seems, of God's plan, when we get past all of the illogical things of God's plan, when we get past the shock and awe of how God has presented the plan of how he's going to work in our life or what he wants us to do, I think sometimes this is where we get caught. Because in the plan, we get past the plan, but then in the plan, some of the details of what has to happen in this plan, we act like they don't really matter. You told us to march around one time for 6 days. You told us to worship every time and be quiet in those times. You told us that the seventh day we do it 7 times. We blow, we shout, and the walls came crumbling down. And we did that. Who cares if we kept just a little bit? Who cares if we didn't devote everything to destruction? I mean, come on. 95%, right? Like 95% is passing. It's an A+ depending on what grade scale you use. You keep any of the devoted things, you make the camp of Israel a thing for destruction, and you're going to bring trouble on it. Sometimes we got a faith to jump in and we get in God's plan, but then sometimes God's plan includes some details that we're like, really? Like all that deep? We got to go that far? We got to be that radical? Correct. Trust that I'm not preaching at you. I am preaching to myself. And you get to hear the psychosis that comes out. 20. It says, so the people shouted, the trumpets blew. As soon as the people heard the trumpet, they shouted. The walls fell down flat. So the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. 21 says, then they devoted all the things in the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys, with the edge of the sword. Again, we don't like that. We don't like to hear God tell us details about things that we don't like to do. Do you not understand what that verse actually says? Women and children were murdered. I know, dude, it's awful. The point is how serious God takes sin. The people of the land were massively sinful, and they were growing in generation in constant sin. It was in direct opposition with God. There was no Jesus Christ at this point. It was payment for your sin. What was payment for your sin? Total destruction. That's how serious God takes sin. Ananias and Sapphira, right? Walking in the back door. Where'd you guys just come from? We gave this money and we sold it, and so here's all the money. It's all the money you got? Yeah, really? Boom. Dead. Why? It's the first time someone lied in the Spirit of God. And God said, ain't happening. And just to make sure we understood, the second one walked in, and God gave him a shot. You going to lie? You're going to tell the truth? I'm going to lie. Dead. How serious does God take sin? So much so that he said, you destroy everything. Men, women, young, old, sheep, oxen, donkeys, all of it. Because what is not from the Lord does not belong with the Lord. So we read now in 22. To the two men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, go to the prostitute's house, Rahab, and bring out from there the woman and all who belong to her, as you swore to her. So the young men who had been spies, they went and they brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brothers and all who belonged to her, and they brought her and all of her relatives and put them outside the camp of Israel. 24, I don't think I have 24, but actually let's just wait. I just want to pause real quick as we're talking about Rahab. Do you guys remember where Rahab's house was at? Chapter 2, verse 15. Then she, Rahab, let them, the messengers, the spies, down by a rope through the window, for her house was built into the city wall so that she lived in the wall. What happened to the wall? Came crumbling down. We got to experience an earthquake. It was one of the wildest things I've ever been in my life. I thought my wife was losing her mind. I woke up in the middle of the night, ready to just start screaming and hitting. I didn't even care she was a girl. She was going to get blasted. I was sleeping, and she woke me up. And then she's in a sheer panic, and our bed is just shaking violently. This is when we were in St. Louis. We were in college. It was crazy. 2:30 something in the morning, blah, blah, blah. It was nuts. Literally saw things shaking. I had never experienced something like that in my entire life. But the building stood up. It didn't fall down. Can you imagine being in your house when the walls came tumbling down? Could you imagine the fear in everybody in that flippin' place when everything began to shake and crumble and rattle and roll, baby? That whole thing is crumbling all around them. That may sound like some of our lives, right? Like our whole life is crashing down around us. Do we not realize that in chapter 2, God already knew what he was going to do? And in chapter 2, he still told that woman to bring her family into her home that was in the wall, that was going to come crashing down. God would never. Yeah, he would, brother. Read the Bible. Death and resurrection are God's ways. He took everything from the people of Israel in the sense of the generation before them. And then he resurrected the new generation and said, go lead. Go do what I asked to do. He took everything away from Rahab and her family. And then, as we keep reading, verse 24? It says they burned the city. This is the Israelites. They burned the city with fire and everything in it. Only the gold, the silver, and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. Verse 25 says, but Rahab the prostitute and her father's house and all who belonged to her, Joshua saved alive. And she has lived in Israel to this day because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. I don't know what your life's like in truth because there's just too many of you. And on top of that, some say, well, there's not too many of you. On top of that, some of you are super private. And that's okay. Because here's what I do know. I know God knows everything. And I'm not stressing about what I don't know. What I do know, though, is that every single one of us have our relationship with God that we have to answer to. Whether we participate in it and engage in it or not. You're going to give an answer to that relationship. When you participate in it and you engage in it, I know that God speaks, God challenges, God grows, God moves, but I need you to be very clear that when he tells you to devote something to him, whether it's for destruction or not, whether it's young or old, whether it's beneficial or detrimental, if God says, devote this to me, we got to pay attention. Faith, assurance in things hoped for, the confidence of things unseen. It says in verse 26, Joshua laid out an oath at this time, and he said, cursed before the Lord be the man who rises up and rebuilds the city of Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn shall he lay its foundation, and at the cost of his youngest son shall he set up its gates. Verse 25. Nope, 26, I can't count. 7? I don't know. Just go to the next verse. Thank you. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was in all the land. Leave that up. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was in all the land. I can't tell you that I don't read that, and I just go, man, I wish that was about me. I wish that was about this church specifically, Windsor Christian Church. I wish more people knew Jesus in this light than the light that they do. Now, so that we're on the same page, you need to understand that fame does not mean the same thing that you think fame means. That word fame is not the same fame and fortune that we couple together. This is not the same word that we have famous people, we know people who have fame in our culture now. No, fame, this word, meant a report. It meant that it was something that was given attention to. What it painted the picture is that when you heard about things, when you heard a report, you gave your attention to this because you needed to listen to it intelligently, due to the fact that it would benefit you knowing this information. And so the fame of Joshua grew in the land, the fame of what God was doing. People were hearing the reports, the miraculous signs and wonders that God was working through his people, Israel. And it was moving through the land, not to where people were just hearing it and letting it go one ear and out the other. No, they were hearing it, and they were giving their attention to it because they knew that they needed to listen to these details and listen to this information intentionally, intelligently, because it was going to benefit them in some way or form. Can you imagine now, again, being talked about that or being talked about like that? Your fame, the report of who you are and how you benefit people's lives is moving before you so that when people are like, oh, hey, you're Jerry. Yeah. I've heard X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Because that's who I am. I would love to be someone that people equate with this type of fame. Not fame for me, but fame for God. The only reason Joshua was in this report at all was because the report wasn't about Joshua. The report was about God, and God was just using Joshua. So guess what? The report's not about you. The report is about God. You get to be included in the report because God's using you. So part 1, blessing follows obedience. Blessing follows obedience. Look at the people of Israel. Blessing followed obedience. Put your feet in the water. Walk across, and it will be dry, and you will be safe. March around one time. Be quiet and sing, or be quiet and blow the trumpets. Worship, music heard once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. On the 7th time, I want you to do it 7 times. And when you blow the trumpet on the 7th time, I want you to just yell and scream. And I want you to watch the walls come tumbling down. And so they did. They took it over. I want you to stay in the house on the wall. Not just you, though. I want you to bring everybody you love. I want you to bring everybody you love. Put them in that house that's located on the wall, because I want to show them how when everything is crumbling down around them and logic says you won't be safe, I want to show them how I am. I want to show them who I am. I want to show them that I'm always with them, that I'm always working outside of them, that they can watch me and follow me no matter where they go. I don't know where God's asking you to be obedient at, but that is the challenge today. So for your relationship, your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, your roommate, co-workers at work, your friends, your parents, your siblings, your children. I don't know where your obedience needs to be inside of your relationship, but obedience comes before blessing. I don't know where your obedience is at in your maturity. Listen, the reality is this, right? Some of us are still growing up. I mean, some of us can be so affectionately termed and dubbed a man-child and still know that at the age of 41, I got a lot of growing up still to do. And so I need to mature more. And sometimes that maturity requires obedience from me. And some of these, you are students. Guess what? Your whole life's about being obedient so you can mature. I know, it's a rough little beat. But it gets better if you're obedient. Because blessing follows obedience. Where in the obedience of your finances do you need to be? Where in the obedience of the plan for your life, where God has taken you, the job that you have, the people you hang around with? Where is the plan, where is the obedience in your life in the repentance of your sins? You're not dead, nor are you perfect. Stop acting like God's not asking you to keep growing closer and closer to being more like the image of Him. So, this is part one, obedience. Where is God challenging you to be obedient? Let me say this. Some of you are without Jesus, and the obedience is just simply this: come home. Come home. Some of you, like the prodigal son, have experienced Jesus, and yet you still run away. Come home. Come home and get to watch how He's waiting for you. And not only is He waiting for you, He's going to run to you. You're not even going to get there first. He's going to beat you to you. And then understand, when you have this big old spiel planned, He's going to say, shh, 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 shh. He's going to put the ring on your finger to show that you belong. He's going to put the cloak on you to show you belong. He's going to dress you up, put new sandals on your feet. He's going to make sure that you're clean when you get home. And not only that, when you get home, it's not going to be like some of the parental conversations that we've had growing up, in the sense of, all right, now let's go through what you did wrong so you can learn from your mistakes. No, He's going to throw a flipping party. He's going to throw a party. And not only is He going to throw a party, He's going to throw people out that don't want a party. Why are we celebrating them? Shh. Get out. We're celebrating because what was lost is found. What was gone is now returned. What was dead is alive. And so obedience for all of us looks different. Some of us, it looks like being obedient in our walk and our faith and our growth and our maturity. It means devoting things to destruction for the Lord that we need to destruct for the Lord and get out of our lives. It also means sometimes just coming home. And so I don't know where you're at, but I do know this. as we close with a song, there's going to be people up front for you to pray with. Now, the song that we're going to close with is going to be a little jam, and so it is what it is. And so if you want to pray during the song, pray during the song. If you'd like them to pray with you after the song, pray with you after the song. If you want to pray during the song and after the song, do it. But this little moment, we're going to share together, and we're going to remind each other of how we should go about our day, our walk, when we circle. And while I know, right, the Israelite people were told, be quiet. Let the trumpets blow, and then let's take a circle. On the seventh time around, on the seventh day, when the trumpet blew, they made a great shout. And so, while that might not be the actual song that was played around the walls of Jericho, I can imagine the song being a song that everyone knew. I can imagine the song being a song that when the trumpet blew, everybody was ready to make that noise, to shout of praise, to use their entirety of their voice. And so here's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask you guys to stand up. And whether you come down to pray or whether you stay in your place and you sit, whether you're praying when we have service going on or whether you're praying after we conclude service, the song that we chose is intentional. And just like they put worship first, I want us to put worship and praise first. And so as we sing this song, Sing Wherever I Go, I hope, as the old song goes, in your heart, they'll ring a melody. And I hope that melody allows you to listen. And my prayer is when you hear that you are obedient. If you wouldn't mind, let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you so much for who you are. Thank you for your Son. Thank you for this time that we have. Thank you for this place that we can meet. Thank you for the ability to not have to worry about being in fear. God, I lift up those that are not feeling well, that are not here because they're sick, that are not here because of life, that are not here because of travel, that are just not here. I ask that you continue to move, you continue to work. Father, I ask that you continue to put us in place to show you to your children. God, I pray for the challenge of obedience and how difficult that is at times. I pray for clarity of being able to know where you're at and where you have taken us and where you're putting us and bringing us. I pray for the ability to know and to see where you're at all times. Father, I pray for this week. I love you. We love you. And all God's people said, amen, amen. Let's sing.